Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone, and welcome to my channel. Today we have a 05 6-liter F350 pickup. This thing was a crank no start, and the description was that sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't. The customer went out to get the vehicle, it wouldn't start, he waited overnight, went out in the morning, got it to start, drove it to the shop, wouldn't start. I got it, would not start, would not build over 270 pounds of cranking oil pressure, which, as we've talked about before, we need 500 pounds to start, a minimum of 500 pounds. It really wants a little bit more than that, but at 500 it'll start. So I have just previously done standpipes and dummy plugs and injectors, probably like 7 months ago. So in this case, I didn't suspect those to be an issue. So now I'm thinking more along the lines of an IPR valve. An IPR valve can also cause a 6-liter to not start. IPR valve needs to close, and it closes at 85% to deadhead the oil pressure so it will start. Now, if that valve is failing and it's not closing, then you will not build correct oil pressure. So when you air check this, you're going to command the IPR. Now, what I did in this case to see if the IPR was the problem, I went out to the truck and I actuated the IPR valve about 5 times. Now, you don't want to leave an IPR valve energized. I think they say in the scan tool no more than 10 seconds. You don't want to burn it up. So I did that, operated about 5 times, opened to close, and then all of a sudden it was building 380 pounds of oil pressure. And then it dropped down to 360. So now I'm thinking, okay, so we probably have an IPR valve problem. I did an air check. Air check didn't change, so I'm going to show you how to put an IPR valve in a 6-liter truck. Before I do that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell so you get notified of all my future content, which you're definitely going to want to see. All right, let's get in there. Let me show you how to change this IPR valve. All right, so to get to the IPR valve, what you got to do is you got to get down way back there. Okay, you can barely see it. All right, so what I do, the easiest thing to do is you're gonna disconnect your mass airflow sensor here. You're gonna undo this hose clamp. Do not touch this hose clamp, all right? And if you ever have to disconnect these two, put a mark so you know where it goes, because it's really difficult to figure out the configuration of that. So just disconnect this one. You're gonna go, it's 8mm. You can use, what I use is I have an 8 and a 10 like this, and I pretty much do everything with that. Got my long neck snap-on. So you're gonna undo both of the 8s here. All right, I got caps that I keep in my cart for this truck, because I'm gonna show you in a minute what it looks like, but I go ahead and disconnect both of these hoses. You can see right now that the cap is leaking, because that came out of the cap while the bottle was tipped up on its side. So I disconnect both of these hoses and I put a cap on here, a good cap. I actually keep these in my cart because I use them all the time on this truck, on these. And then this hose here, pretty much just tuck this hose right here. I just tuck this out of the way. This one over here, show you later. I go ahead and pinch that one off because that one just kind of leaks everywhere. So once you get your mass airflow sensor disconnected, you're gonna disconnect your air filter minder here, and you're gonna pop this air filter minder out. You just twist it and kind of give it like a pull, and it'll twist out. Just take all that stuff and you can put it up here. Just stick it right there, grab this air box, grab it right here, and just pull. And you can pull this whole box out. It comes out all as one assembly. Next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go down here and you're gonna loosen that hose clamp. That's gonna be an 8mm. And I'll show you in a minute what the PCV looks like. But attached to this hose here is another hose that goes into the driver's valve cover. So you're gonna pop that out of the valve cover, and then you're just gonna twist this hose counterclockwise, and it's gonna twist off. Gonna get this out of the way, show you later. This degas bottle is just gonna pull forward and lay straight up and down right here out of the way. And then I'll show you, then you got the FICM. Gotta get the FICM out of there. And we got to remove the harness, and I'll show you all that in a minute. But that's how you get to everything from here, from the beginning. Couple things, be very careful leaning on the radiator, because I've broken this nipple off before and had to replace the radiator. That's about it. All right, I'll show you the rest. in a minute. Okay, so you got your PCM here, your FICM here. You're gonna have to undo, I always undo the glow plug connector here and unclip it here, unclip it down here on the stud, and I disconnect the exhaust back pressure sensor here, and it has a like a Christmas tree that pops in here and a Christmas tree that pops in here, and it routes through here. All right, so that's the, and then the FICM is 2 10s, and then it'll be either 8s or 10s in the back. It'll be 2 bolts. They're always changed because people always lose them and whatever. And then you'll have your air intake tube, which is here. All right, so you gotta, easiest way to do it is to put it on the turbo and roll it clockwise. And when you do that, you just got to get this PCV lined up in this hole. You got to kind of pop it in. Once you get that, go ahead and tighten your hose clamp right there. It's a 8mm or 15/16. All right, let me put this on. Just make sure you got everything connected. Make sure if you disconnected any injectors, anything like that, you've got them reconnected, because then it won't start and you'll have an issue and you'll take it back apart. All right, let me get this on and I'll show you what's next. All right, so this is the way that you want to be working on this is once you've taken your air box out, okay, you've taken your air intake tube and your air box out. You've got your degas bottle cap tight, and you get a good solid fitting cap here and a good solid fitting cap here, and you can just roll this bottle forward like this, and you see how I have all the room in the world to work back here. Now, one thing to be careful of is this hose right here that attaches to the degas bottle. That Y is common to crack, so if it's close to cracking and you work on it like this, it will break. But then again, if you disconnect it, it'll break anyway, so just be careful of that right there. I don't like to disconnect coolant if I don't have to, and so on this one I definitely have not, and I do not. So that's it right there. That's how I have it. All right, so you're gonna have your FICM here, and the easiest way to disconnect it is you start at the front, and you got 2 tabs on the front and rear of the on both sides of the connector. You're gonna reach in there with both hands and depress each one and pull down. And you start with the front one, then the next one, and the next one. Now, to plug it back in, it's easier to plug in the front one because you can see it, and then you just push it up, and then you do the second one, and then the back one. And then you're gonna set it down here, and you're gonna have your 2 nuts here that go on here, and you're gonna have 2 bolts in the back, and that's how you bolt your FICM down. Just make sure your harness is all plugged in. If your FICM connectors do not connect, they don't click in, you should hear them click. You'll have to put a piece of heater hose underneath in between the valve cover and the FICM connectors. So when you bolt your FICM down, it'll push up on the connectors and keep them connected, because that will cause it not to start. All right. So once you get to this point, when you've got your FICM out, you got your glow plug harness disconnected, your FICM disconnected. What you want to do is you're going to have a ground right there. There's a ground. Okay, the easiest way to do this is to disconnect the nut and take that ground wire off. If your bolt starts spinning, you need some thin wrenches to slip underneath it. I'll show you what those look like. Mine came off because I just replaced this harness. So you're going to take that nut off. You're going to disconnect your back 2 injectors, your number 8 and your number 6 right there, and you can pull this harness. You can pull this harness right here, and you can put it right up on top of the turbo and get it out of your way. Then you're going to reach down there and disconnect your IPR connector, and that is going to come from this main harness right here. All right, that's the harness that stays, the front connector for the FICM. So once you do that, you can pull this out of the way. What I do is I take this back where the ground is for the IPR, right there, that ground strap. Underneath there's a 10mm stud. I go ahead and take that stud out so I can stick my hand back there. Now this is what you need to replace the IPR. I can do it this way most of the time. So I've got my IPR socket. I'll put a link in the description for this. And then I have a regular 3/8 universal. Make sure you use a good one, Snap-on or something, because it might break. and you want it to be strong. And I have an 8-inch extension. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna bring your extension up about right here. And then you can take a 1/2-inch ratchet like this guy here, right, and put an adapter. And you can break it loose. You can reach down there, and then you can put a 3/8 ratchet on it and unscrew it most of the way, reach down there with your hand and get it the rest of the way out. Now, to get to this point, I'll show you that after I put it back together. I'll show you what it takes to do this IPR. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do this one backwards. Replacing the IPR valve in this 0.5 6-liter. So the IPR valve is right back there. Let's see. All right, it is right there. That silver thing back there. All right, I'll show you what that looks like. But your connector looks like, no, not that one. All right, your connector has a little latch on it. Let's see if you can see it. Okay, so your connector has a latch on the right side. You have to lift the latch up and pull the connector off to replace this. All right, so here we go. When you got a 6-liter like this and you've messed with the high pressure oil system, you want to make sure you put a charger on it, because you're gonna have to crank it a lot, because we blew out all the oil, and then now there's a bunch of air in there, so now we got to get all the oil bled out. So what I like to do when I get done is I like to go into memory codes, and I like to just make sure that since we had the key on and we were operating the IPR, it set a whole bunch of codes. And so what I wanted to do was make sure that I didn't have glow plugs not connected or a back pressure sensor not connected. So you go in and you clear the codes, and then you come back and you turn the key off and you double check and you make sure that there are no codes. As long as there's no codes, now we're gonna go to data display. Don't get discouraged, because right when you start to feel like you're in a state of fail, like maybe it's not gonna start and you messed up, you screwed up, you didn't do it right, it's gonna start. So you don't want to crank for more than 10 seconds. That's not good for the starter. I've had a whole bunch of 6-liters that come in, and the starter is melted, and I have to replace the starter just to be able to even crank the engine to see what's going on with it, to diagnose it. So we're gonna be looking at that PID right there. It's not gonna read anything for a while. So we're gonna crank this thing. I got a battery charger on it. So let's crank it. Now you're also gonna set a code during this. You're gonna set a low code, an ICP code. So you'll have to clear it once you get it running. So my batteries are already pulling down. All right, I'm gonna go put it on crank assist. I'll be right back. Okay, we did a crank assist pre-charge, so now we're gonna try to get this going here. It's not really gonna read anything for a while. Remember, 10 seconds on the starter. 10 seconds just to be safe. You don't want to mess up your starter, because it gets pretty hot. Just give it about 10-second rest in between. Truck's pulling down. I think we're going to start here in just a minute. Let's see if we can get it started here before the batteries quit. There we go. Look at that. Boom. We started. The batteries were just about to crap out. All right. And now when we're all done, we're going to have to go back and clear codes, because we're going to have an ICP too low code. So now that I've showed you how to replace an IPR valve, you should feel pretty confident in doing so, even if you are not a diesel mechanic. This is not a super difficult job, and you're not dealing with anything that requires being a diesel mechanic to get it done. The only thing that you will need is an IPR valve socket, and you will need some extensions and wobbles and things like that to get in there. Now that IPR valve is extremely tight. So In my case, I was able to do it with a long 3/8 ratchet, but I felt like my universal socket was going to break. So it's really difficult. If you can use a 1/2 inch ratchet, it actually is a lot easier to break it loose. Definitely your first time, you're going to want to try to get a configuration with a 1/2 inch drive to do so. I was doing all with 3/8 and it worked for me. But I usually use a 1/2 inch. So that usually you really need to go and drive this thing on the freeway to get all the air out. You can run it, take it on short test drives, turn it off, you're going to have a long crank. You're going to have a long crank 5 to 10 times until you go and drive it. I mean, you got to really get it working to get all that air out. So that is the tip for replacing an IPR valve. I hope you'll feel confident in doing this repair. Thank you for watching the video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you're definitely going to want to see. Also, check me out on Instagram at Nuts and Bolts with Tone for my daily life as a mechanic. Show you all kinds of cool stuff. Show you diesels that don't start. Show you some really cool oil leaks, and show you a lot of tools in use. Check out my merchandise store. You can get yourself a coffee cup, t-shirt, support the channel. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you next time.